All right, Profs. We're back with the end of this book, and I'm ready for it. Salem's Children by Mary Leader. And I will no longer answer moronic questions while I'm reading. It's boring. Chapter 28. I believe this is the last chapter, and then there's a prologue. Shadowed eye sockets in the firelight made masks of the faces of those gathered on Bishop's Bluff. Only the hardiest, angriest, and most curious had reached the top, some having given up on the rugged cowpath and gone home to their television sets. Firewood ripped from the dilapidated shack was now a blazing beacon for miles around, for night had clamped its lid down over the landscape. Our numbers had thinned, but one by one, those hunting for Kyriad were arriving, either to report or to give up and stay. Lanterns and flashlights flickered like fireflies here and there among the hills. In the distance, a sleepless coyote howled his woes to a jagged sickle of moon, and a screech owl somewhere in the night warned of impending disaster. The drop in temperature had turned the mud furrowed slopes into a frozen corduroy that twisted ankles and tripped up our feet. Dana stumbled along near the head of the column. Jim Willard, the Jacksons, and the Zagrodniks, under Caleb's hawk-like eye, and don't mind the coffee pot if you can hear it, took turns making chairs with their hands to carry Aunt Jenny up the steep incline. About halfway up, I saw Dana falter and almost go down. Someone had thrust a gallon jug of liquor, I supposed, into her hands, and the weight of it had thrown her off balance. I scrambled forward and took the bottle away from her just as she slipped to her knees again. She was breathing hard, and her lameness was more pronounced. Tyler Bishop caught up with us. What's going on here? She lost her balance. Come here, Mel, he called to the undertaker. Take this gasoline on up ahead so they can start the bonfire. Again, Dana staggered, and I slipped my arm into hers to support her. She shivered and tried to pull away. I don't deserve your help, she panted, but she leaned on me heavily, seeming to draw strength from me, for her steps quickened. Her weight on my arm decreased, and she regained the breath to speak. The stars do not decree our fate, she said. We sow our fate in the stars, and when they come around again, we must reap according to what we have sown. Once I betrayed a friend, not deliberately, but I helped cause her death, and I was unable to save her, or, her voice fell, too cowardly. She and her mother had been good to me and my people, had saved some of us from the spotted disease, but other white people had been bad. We wanted to frighten the white man so he would go away from Naumkeag. So we danced with the slaves at their Sabbaths. They drank of our magic, and we of theirs, until we brewed a strong poison for our enemies. The Obaya man instructed us. We drove their cattle into the sea, weakened their axles so their wheels fell off, threw stones at their houses, and planted toads and snakes and strange animals in their beds and in the meeting house, while the slaves hid poppets where they would be found and spread evil rumors about those whom the Obaya man chose. I did not think my poison could hurt my friend because she didn't belong to the Obaya man's church and owned no slave. Obaya man's church, pardon, I thought there was a period there. And owned no slave, but it did. Vengeance is not justice, it is a stone thrown into the waters and makes no distinction between innocent and guilty. You will need to remember that tonight, Mitty. My mind slipped gears between past and present. She knew nothing of my dreams. Yet this might have been Yawata walking beside me. Her fingers tightened on my wrist. The world is full of demons, she continued, material and immaterial, but for every demon there are 1,000 good spirits, angels you call them, if we only make use of them. One of these is forgiveness, who is only a little less strong than love. But we must have discipline and punishment, I argued. To forgive doesn't require us to condone, she said. As for discipline and punishment, they are the responsibility of the law and society. I speak of the individual spirit. Our responsibility is to seek after angels, not demons. They're all about us, and it is up to us to choose. Because I chose wrongly, my friend, her sister, and others died. I have paid my debt. I have paid my debt to the sister, but I have other debts to pay tonight. Was she out of her head, or was I dreaming this too? The wind sang around us, and the air was filled with voices. When we reached the top of the bluff, Dana was separated from me and herded to one side where the accused were assembled, under a large oak on the smoke laden side of the fire. She mounted a small wobbly platform, her face muffled in the hood of her cloak. Caleb leaned on his shotgun beside her, the blue veins in his nose glistening in the firelight. At his order, his charges seated themselves on the ground. Darcy and Marion, huddled together in silence. Aunt Jenny lay with her head in Rhoda Jackson's lap, shivering under the blanket someone had thrown over her, while Jim Willard and Daryl Jackson sat to one side. They were the goats. I was kept among the sheep on the leeward side of the fire, possibly because they hadn't made up their minds about me in spite of Iris's denunciation. It was my child who was missing, and they were torn between pity and vengeance. Though I was close to the fire, its warmth failed to drive the chill from my heart. How could I remain here in this madness when my child was lost somewhere out there? But Damon kept a firm grip on me, and I was as much a prisoner as those on the other side of the fire. Rowan, too, had tried to join the hunt, but had been ordered back, for which I was grateful. Now she remained silent among the gibbering girls, her head downcast. Iris stood next to her, eyes riveted on the fire, her mouth curved in a slight smile. Esther had left her baby with Mrs. Soames, and now was trying to calm Mrs. Willard. Greg was nowhere to be seen. Was his one of those lights out there in the dark? Lucian stood with his back so close to the flames he seemed almost to have risen out of them. He held his Bible in his hand, its pages bristling with white reference cards. After a moment of silent prayer, he opened to one of the selections. Brothers and sisters, his voice rose above the wind and the crackling wood. We have come to a difficult moment in the history of this community. We who have loathed witch hunters are forced to face the reality that traffickers with Satan do exist and must be ferreted out and either made to turn from their sinful ways or to be cast out. Even so did Lucifer attack Salem. There his weapons were superstition and fear. Do not think because we gather to cast Satan out of our society that we have become witch hunters as they did 3 centuries ago. The evil one uses stratagems to confuse our thinking. Where our ancestors were too strict, we have been too liberal. We define evil as a mental disease. Satan would crow with delight if he were to liken the sufferings of these girls to the vicious behavior of those maids in Salem. The Puritans believed in Satan and feared him. We, all too often, neither believe in him nor fear him. thus are all the more vulnerable to his delusions. Now witches can brazenly parade their blasphemy before us, and all we do is say, "How quaint." A prolonged nervous titter formed a descent over mutterings about the fire. Someone started to clap, then stopped. Strange things, Lucian continued when they had quieted, have been going on in Peacehaven, from trivial incidents to murder. You have tolerated the presence of pagans and atheists. St. John wrote of a similar situation in Revelation. I know thy works and charity and service and faith and thy patience. Notwithstanding, I assume it's going to say, I have a few things against thee, because thou suffered that woman Jezebel, turning his head slowly toward Dana, which calleth herself a prophetess, to teach and to seduce my servants, to commit fornication, and to eat things sacrificed unto idols. Now you are asking, Lucian, when have we committed fornication with her, eaten things sacrificed unto idols? I say to hold commerce with her is mental fornication, and to drink of her potions is to eat meat sacrificed unto idols. He pointed to Aunt Jenny. Who knows what poisons she's been given? What are the poison you feed these people, Lucy and Leroy? Aunt Jenny cried out from the other side of the fire. The crowd began to murmur angrily. Be tolerant toward our elderly sister, Lucy stilled them. She may have done this in all innocence at first. I perceive that this one, he held out his hand to Gladys, repents having fetched those medicines for her mother. Is that not so, my child? Gladys's opulent bosom began to heave. I did it because they eased her pains, but I wasn't the only one. Muriel was guilty too. Her sister shot her an angry look. Both of you acted out of compassion, he said gently. Tell me, did you ever see the Indian woman making strange signs over her potions or uttering magical words? Oh no, never. That is, not until the rehearsal tonight, Muriel exclaimed. Wheel, Gladys groped to please. There was a faraway look in her eyes at times. What about the love potion you asked for, Glad? Muriel had her revenge. Ah, Gladys, even you, Lucian asked sadly. Now the tears came. I was desperate. I found Dana tending her goat. She asked him if he thought I should have it. Sickened, I remembered Dana's whimsical way with Caper. And did he, this goat, answer? He seemed angry. He hit her with his head, and she fell down and worshipped him. Oh, Caper and his antics. If only Greg was here, he could tell how Caper knocked him down. Worshipped him, the minister reeled with horror. She talked to him in a strange tongue, scolded him in Winnebago, no doubt. And did she give you the potion? No, she said what I desired was not to be that. Why? Lucian stopped her mouth with his fingers. That is enough, my child. Your secrets are your own. Praise the Lord, he protected you. So he continued, we have heard testimony that this woman dispensed magic potions and bowed down to a goatish god. Hear now what the Lord saith. Whoever lieth with a beast shall surely be put to death. He that sacrificeth unto any god, save unto the Lord only, he shall be utterly destroyed. There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or daughter to pass through the fire. That submit, Elspeth screamed. She put my son through the fire. There's your witch. Why isn't she with the accused? Very good question. Her question foundered as Homer read, and Lester Jacobs, carrying shotguns, came up the path. We went to the witch farm, Homer reported, but they must have had their Sabbath somewhere else. We did find them anywhere, probably taken off somewhere with the baby, Lester added. Charity came over to me. I hope they find Carrie, Mitty. I know I haven't been very friendly. Hate me if you wish. But don't be too hard on Damon, please. He's obsessed with the idea of restoring Peacehaven. He cares about nothing else, not even me. He says I'm weak and neurotic. I don't think he ever really loved me. He thought he was marrying a fortune. I wish I didn't love him, but I do. I shouldn't go on like this. Maybe I really am neurotic. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. But my anguish had turned to unrelenting rage. Oh, yes, you're sorry. You had no qualms about trying to steal Rowan from me, or trying to drive me and my children from our home. I suppose you were in on those phone calls, too. She lowered her eyes. I didn't make any. I didn't like the idea, but Damon and the others insisted on them. Iris was most often your caller. She was a miserable spectacle crouching there, the tears running down her cheeks. But her very passivity infuriated me. Why didn't she scream at me, recount my shortcomings, anything to give me license to let loose my full wrath? Charity, I sneered, what mockery your name! I taunted, hoping to provoke a retort, but she remained mute, feeling the rage that boiled within me, building up a power that forced my lips open. May God the valve closed at my anger and choked the words back as Lucian took up his sermon again. There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or daughter to pass through the fire, or useth divination, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a wizard, or a necromancer, for all that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord. Neither shalt thou lie with any beast to defile thyself therewith. Neither shall any woman stand before a beast to lie down thereto. Did not this woman here lie down before her beast? That she did, Gladys affirmed. I don't believe it. Esther's courage flared momentarily. Are you her disciple, woman? Lucian thundered. I? Oh no. Her courage had flickered out. The girls had gone into spasms again, all but Rowan. Stop it, Carol, Esther shrieked, grabbing her daughter's arm. At once the girl desisted, and so did the others, as one by one they touched the distraught woman. Do you confess your guilt? Lucian demanded. She fell to her knees, her hands covering her face. I do, she whispered, sobbing. So this is what Mary Esty meant by confessing witches, who believed themselves to save their lives. Praise the Lord, the minister rejoiced. We've snatched the soul from the brink of hell. More steps on the path. One of Good's men reported. No signs of the baby. Herb's gone for his dogs, and Scotty and the Cloyces are bringing Dr. Brune and Mother Carrier. And the train whistle as well. My mother, Damon exclaimed. Why her? This is too much strain for her. Didn't Lucian say anyone who's trafficked with the devil? Tyler Bishop shouted. But she's my mother, the doctor said through gritted teeth. What difference does that make? Bishop persisted. He would have said more, but the Cloyce brothers and Dr. Brune arrived carrying Damon's mother, who moaned as they laid her down next to Aunt Jenny. Dr. Brune knelt by her side and listened to her heart, felt her swollen ankles, and turned to Damon. Do you have any digitalis for IV injection, doctor? I have digoxin. Damon took a hypodermic syringe and an ampule of the medication from his bag. Dr. Brune administered the shot. I want to move her out of the smoke, Damon continued. She's having difficulty breathing. Ignoring protests, the two doctors carried her over to the sheep side of the fire. She was fine before we left the house, Dr. Brune said. I had just returned and knew nothing about the kidnapping, and these fellows burst in with their guns and dragged us up here. Mother Carrier was regaining consciousness, and her chest rails had subsided. Elspeth confronted Dr. Brune. So you just returned from your coven, no doubt. What did you do with the baby? Again she was thwarted, this time by the arrival of Scott Buckley, loaded with boxes and the wicker boat frame. We found these in the wizard's room, he told them, depositing Dr. Brune's precious specimens in a jumble on the ground. Rosalind Bishop picked up the frame. What's this? That, said Iris, is part of a witch's cradle, a device for meditation. The witch suspends himself in it. This one is broken. She's lying. I've seen that before, I spoke up. It's a boat frame. Dr. Brune found it. A warning flash in Dr. Brune's eyes stopped me from betraying the secret of the cave. Then the warning turned to agony as Lucian took the frame from Rosalind and tossed it into the fire. Elspeth ripped open another box. There's nothing in here but old bones. Into the flames with those too, Lucian ordered. One by one, all of Dr. Brune's painstakingly collected specimens went into the fire. I turned my head, unable to bear the hurt in his eyes. You knew these were sorcerer's devices, Submit, Lucian rebuked me. He turned to another marker in his Bible. You have all seen the mark of the beast, or devil, upon this Indian woman, he reminded the crowd. John says in Revelation, and the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast. These were cast alive into a lake of fire, burning with brimstone. Something burst out of the bushes. People gasped and cringed, but it was Greg, his wig askew, and the hem of his robe torn. He held up a tiny pink dress, ripped and bloodied. I felt myself sink to the ground. Damon lifted me and forced me to stand. This was lying near the cave, Greg panted. Lucian took the garment from Greg's hand and raised it over his head in the firelight. When I saw the bloodstains, I sagged again. Damon pushed my head down between my knees until I was conscious once more. And with consciousness came reason. Kyriad hadn't been wearing that dress today. She'd had on blue overalls, and Dana would have put a snowsuit on her. That dress has been missing from the outside line since the day Jonah had slipped the snapshot under my door. Has anyone investigated the cave? Lucian asked. A couple of deputies had just finished when I got there, Greg replied. They found nothing. How come they didn't see this? Homer asked incredulously. I don't know, but I thought I did. Someone had dropped it when Greg would find it. Where Greg would find it. But did Jonah have cunning like that? I tried to tell them, tried to scream out that someone had planted this, but it was impossible to be heard over the frenzy that seized them. Not only the girls this time, but the older women and some of the men as well. They linked their arms and began to sway like the witch shadows in the cave, intoning mesmerically in the night as Iris led them in their chant. Higher and higher rose their keening, their bodies contorted, their eyes rolling, as the black man of my dream read from his black book. The hand of Satan is upon them. Lucian shouted to Greg, who appeared to nod in agreement. Who are those that afflict them? A blast from Caleb's shotgun brought the chant to an abrupt end. What's wrong, Caleb? Lucian asked the hardware dealer who was waving his gun and cursing. Jim Willard's disappeared. Sneaked out when I wasn't looking. That's a hell of a note, Homer growled. If you couldn't keep an eye on him, why didn't you ask for help? You were supposed to assist without being asked, Caleb snapped back. Did you think you'd gone off duty? I suppose no one knows where he escaped, Tyler put in. Caleb pointed his gun at the prisoners. I bet they know. They sat there impassive, then Darcy chuckled. You didn't think we'd tell, did you? Besides, we've been enjoying your show. Silence, woman, Lucian thundered. Who among you afflicted these girls and these women? There was no answer but the hissing of the dwindling flames. Andy Cloyce threw more wood on the fire to rebuild it. Hank had the gasoline jug ready to soak the boards, but the rotten wood caught by itself, so he put the almost full bottle out in the dark beyond the range of the fire. Now, out of the lull came a slithering sound. My blood turned cold as I saw the girls squirming across the ground toward the accused. Touch us, heal us, take back your devils, they pleaded, pawing the prisoners one after the other. But this time it did them no good, and on they came, circling the fire on their bellies, until they faced me, their tongues lolling from their mouths, their long hair sweeping the ground. At a signal from Iris, Rowan sprang up and confronted me. Why don't you tell them the truth, mother? Tell them what you are. You're one of them, aren't you? You wanted Carrie dead, didn't you? Am I next? She whirled onto the others. She killed my father. She cursed him, and he died. She killed him. She killed him. Make her tell you what she did with Carrie. Make her tell you. My hand flew to my throat at the horror of it. Hopelessly, I saw their hands do likewise. Elspeth rushed at me, froth on her lips. Didn't I say so? She killed my boy. He left my house that morning, so handsome, so full of life. Her eyes were mad in the firelight. Make her confess. She pointed to the two doors that had been taken down from the shack to use in the pressing scene. Crush the truth out of her. Press her. During her tirade, some of the men had been fastening a rope to an overhanging branch of the oak tree and passing the noose around Dana's neck. Now they advanced on me, carrying the doors. Dr. Bruin sprang in front of me, but Caleb clipped him on the head with the gun stock, and he went down heavily. I was thrown to the ground and dragged toward the prisoners. I struggled to free myself, screaming to Greg to help me. But the man standing tall above me, still in his judicial robe, his gavel raised, was not Gregory Town. Then the heavy door hid his face from me entirely. It came, the first rock crashing down on the wood, not much more than a pebble, then a boulder striking just above my ribs and sending pain racketing through my body. Another and another, then a shower of them, driving splinters into me. I thought of the woman Christ saved from stoning. Oh, Jesus, help me. My lungs flattened with the weight, blood, with the weight. Blood burst from 1,000 places. Stop it, Greg's voice, and someone clawing at the rocks and trying to drag them away. She may have had enough, Lucian's voice. Rip away that loose board by her head and give her a chance to recant. She's innocent, Greg screamed, struggling futilely to break away from someone restraining him. I swear she's innocent. Kill me. I tell you this is murder. Now, if it is ordained by God, Lucian retorted. He leaned down and wiped my face with Carrie's dress. Do you confess, my child? God can still forgive you. I retched and turned my head away, seeing a figure in a goatish mask. He leaned down further and whispered in my ear, Don't you know me yet? Why must you always obstruct me? I peered into his face, the many faces he'd worn throughout the ages. Memories came rushing into my disordered brain. Phantasms which receded before I could sort them out. The man who would be God sinking lower each time around. Phaeton in his chariot. Icarus on melting wings. Simon Magus plummeting from his tower. Samuel Paris playing God to the slaves. And with his parishioners' lives, Lucian on the chimney rock. Now he was on his knees beside me. I can save you, he repeated. Only submit to me. Then, in a voice audible to the rest, confess, submit, if you would save yourself. We are waiting, submit, Lucian persisted. Submit. Through the pain glazing my eyes, I could see their faces ringing me with hate. Their eyes were black slits in the firelight, but here and there I could pick them out. Tituba standing in Elspeth's place, Master Thomas Putnam, Damon, Dorcas. Do you know us, Submit? Yes, your name is Legion, I moaned, and you have entered into swine. They clapped their hands and danced around. You didn't guess. You lost your chance. We are all Satan. Didn't you know? They screeched their loathing at the vision faded. Lucian rose and silenced them. Holding his hands high, he cried, Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. As if triggered by his words, the gasoline jug, trailing a lighted wick, came hurtling out of the dark. splashing the small group around Dana with a million droplets. Flames followed in their wake. I was protected by the door, but the others' clothes were ablaze, screams splitting the night. I saw Marion, his hair and beard alight, push Darcy onto free ground, rolling her over and over until the flames were extinguished, but by now he was a torch. Rhoda managed to get out of the fire, and Dr. Brune caught Darrell's hand, pulling him to Rhoda's side, then lay there beating their blazing garments. Then Dr. Brune dragged Aunt Jenny out of the flames and tried vainly to breathe life into her. Greg plunged into the fire, had to retreat to cast off his smoldering robe, then into the inferno again in an attempt to reach Dana, only to be driven back, then try again. Before the fire was fully upon her, Dana's voice was heard above the shrieks and groans of the dying. Mauna, forgive them. As a sign, let the river be turned back from Peacehaven. A spasm of coughing racked her. Lifting up her bound hand, she cried, Hey, Nink Ira. That was all. The flimsy platform had mercifully burned out from under her, and the rope spared her the torture of the flames. At the moment her body stiffened with the jerk of the rope, the ground rocked beneath us. A deathly quiet descended on the people of Peacehaven, who clung to each other in horror. Not even in Salem had witches been burned. Then, in the silence, I heard the thin wail of a child. Quentin burst into the circle with Kyriad in his arms. The door was lifted from me, and Greg's arms were around me, supporting me, for I knew I was hurt, yet I was divorced from the pain in this moment of joy and tragedy. Rowan had taken Carrie from Quentin and was regarding me with a strange, unreadable expression. Carrie had reached out her arms to me, but I hadn't the strength to lift her. I could only touch her cheeks and her lips and her sturdy little body, assuring myself that she at least was unharmed. They were quiet as Quentin told his story. Jonah, on his father's orders, had taken Carrie. Since he couldn't drive, he'd had to carry the child over the back of the bluff and across Ruby's fields on his way to the witch farm, where he'd been told to wait. Irv then intended to stage a dramatic rescue, as he hadn't meant to kill the child, only frighten me into leaving Peacehaven and incriminate the coven at the same time. Macduff caught up with Jonah and Carrie on the Hobbs farm. The terrified boy fled across the barnyard toward the woodshed, but when he saw he couldn't outstrip the dog, he dropped Carrie near the barn. It was something after that that the great white fighting dog had managed to break. It was some time after that that the great white fighting dog had managed to break through the loose boards and had attacked. While Jonah covered in the woodshed, Macduff, young as he was, took on the terrier, dodging this way and that to divert him from the child. He was no match for the beast, but he was younger and faster, and by maneuvering kept the bull terrier at bay just long enough. The slashing teeth were at Macduff's throat when a state trooper's bullet dropped the maddened animal. Just then, Irv Good had burst upon them, and when he saw Quentin and the troopers and the blood from the dogs, he'd panicked. You'll never catch me, he screamed, dashing into the barn and up the stairs. Slamming down the trapdoor, they'd heard him cursing and banging open the cage doors, trying to recruit a defense squad. But he had lost control of his animals. Here was the man who had beaten and brutalized them. One sprang for his throat, and then the whole pack was on him. Before the troopers could reach him, Irv Good lay dying, but he'd gasped out a confession in his last moments. With that, and what they had seen and what Jonah had been able to tell them, they'd pretty well pieced together the whole puzzle by the time Jim Willard came stumbling into the barnyard, winded and barely able to tell them what was going on up on the bluff. Get up there with the child, he'd begged Quentin, who was tending Macduff's injuries. If you don't, something terrible will happen. What about my Carol? Homer wanted to know. And my Susie, Muriel cried. We figured they wandered into the barn looking for the money old Hobbs was supposed to have hidden in there and were killed by the guard dog Irv. By the guard dog. Irv didn't dare have them traced to his barn, so he'd planted the bodies elsewhere. They were still mute with shock after Quentin had finished. Then it came, the instinctive reaction of a people ashamed, each blaming the others. The sickening stench of burned flesh was nothing compared to the stench in our souls. Linda broke open the abscess. It was Irish, she told me. My mother would die if I didn't do what she said. She sobbed. Like making phone calls, Debbie. Mother and I made the little car and the poppet of Mitty with hair Rowan got for us, Sissy sounded rather proud. We'll all burn in hell, Carol wailed. No, we won't, Sissy assured her. Lucian said we were doing God's work by driving out the unfaithful. The grown-ups were in on it, too. Iris is guilty, an older voice cried, and Lucian, too, and Elspeth, Muriel. What a weird phrasing there, where she doesn't even said Muriel. Tyler Bishop, Damon. Damon and Charity, Tyler Bishop. Caleb, Homer, Caleb. And they turned viciously on each other. My eyes were blinded by the fury and hatred in me. I trembled with the terrible power, and I knew that if I just uttered the words, I could damn them all. But Dana had forgiven them. Forgiveness is only a little less strong than love. She had said. Love was beyond me at that moment, but forgiveness was just barely within reach. Something I, as Marietzi, had not achieved on this side of the wall. Charity stood before me, holding her arms out in supplication. Can you ever forgive us, Mitty? Pushing Greg's blistered hands gently away, I stood alone. This I had to do for myself. I forgive you, I whispered to them and to Owen. Then the blackness rushed in on me, but following me into the dark were Rowan's eyes, moist and shining with love. The epilogue. Peacehaven's day of penance has ended, and Bishop's Bluff stands brooding over its ugly memories. The dignitaries and reporters and sightseers have all left. 'Twill surprise me if today's ritual of penance will be repeated for 20 years as was the one in Massachusetts colony nigh 3 centuries ago. These people seem not as strict in such observances. Yet I cannot think they will ever be able to look on the scarred and sullied crest of that bluff without paying a silent penance. Now, on this warm May eve, as sunset pales into twilight, submit, Mitty, the other part of me lies dreaming on the soft new grass in her sanctuary in the wood, and since she is here, I must be here too, for she and I are one, though at times we separate as far as the silver cord can stretch. But Mary Eastick is only one part of me, for I have lived before again and again, and I'll not know the sum of myself until I have played out all of my lives. Mitty is but a 7-night home from the hospital, for she suffered internal injuries that terrible night and lay in a coma for days, during which she slipped through the invisible wall into our world, and she and I were one with our memories and our loved ones. Greg left town without seeing her after he knew she was out of danger, and returned only today, which saddened Mitty, who as yet doesn't understand that he had come to terms with himself. Before he had to come to terms with himself before he could face her again. Mitty's forgiveness was more than Lucian could bear. To forgive is godly, to be forgiven mortal. His body was found the next morning at the bottom of Tomahawk Rock. No one knows where Iris is. She closed the patch and shut herself up in the old house. When Jim Willard, I guess you would know where she is if she's in the old house. When Jim Willard, the new sheriff, went to see her, he found the house vacant. Some think she drowned. Perhaps her lover claimed her, and she swims with him now in that shadowy world beneath the waters. Dr. Brune still lives in Dana's house, and Mrs. Soames is his housekeeper. He's Peacehaven's new minister, at least until the people are mended. He has given up the search for Prince Madog's descendants, for the tremor that shook the earth when Dana died crashed the thin floor of the upper cave, causing it to collapse inward onto the lower level. To Dr. Brune and Mitty, it was a sign that Peacehaven and the world are not ready for the truth. Folk came from afar to attend today's service, a few, mayhap, to hear the famous Dr. Brune preach, the rest sensation seekers. But what began as adventure was transformed into a sobering occasion, and all joined in, experiencing a collective guilt. And the governor came to announce a new project for harnessing the river and reclaiming lost lands. As a sign, let the river be turned back from Peacehaven. All the townspeople were there today, all who were able, that is. Mother Carrier, who now lives with Charity and Damon, and her great grandson, was naturally too feeble to come. The girls clustered together as usual, but they were no longer a nucleus for destruction. Lucy, who's being adopted by Dr. Brune, stood fearfully to one side, her face pale and pinched behind those enormous spectacles, until Rowan put her arm around her and drew her gently into the group. Conspicuously absent were Rosalind and Tyler Bishop. When the real estate bubble burst, the Bishops tried to flee with stolen funds, but Caleb Toothaker, who knew his half-brother too well, intercepted them as they were leaving the bank, and as deputy sheriff arrested them. They in turn accused him of having gone to the till himself. Endless questions arise. For some, the answers will come in time, for others, never. Who threw the gasoline bomb? Only the guilty one knows, and must live with that knowledge, if he can. Yet even that crime must be shared to some extent by each and every one in Peacehaven. We walked in clouds and could not see our way, and we have most cause to be humbled for error, which cannot be retrieved. Thus, with the words of the Reverend John Hale, written nearly 3 centuries ago, did Dr. Brune begin his homily today. After a brief, eloquent address, he motioned to Rowan. She came forward hesitantly, then faced the crowd, biting her lip, her chin slightly tilted. I desire, she said in a clear, tremulous voice, to be humbled before God for the accusing of several persons of a grievous crime, whereby their lives were taken away from them, whom now I have just grounds and good reason to believe they were innocent persons, and that it was a great delusion of Satan that deceived me in that sad time, whereby I justly fear I have been instrumental with others, though ignorantly and unwittingly, to bring upon myself and this land the guilt of innocent blood. So far 'twas Ann Putnam's confession of guilt that Rowan was quoting, but suddenly she burst out with words of her own. I blamed my mother for Junior's death, but most of all for my father's. She stopped to wipe away the tears coursing down her cheeks. Mother never told me the truth about my father, because she didn't want me to think badly of him. And I probably would have, but now I know he fell into error because he was afraid of failure and of not being able to provide for Mother and Kyriad and me. Dr. Brune says God has surely forgiven him because he didn't know what he was doing. Therefore, so must I. I only hope God can forgive me for what I have done. I can't bring back those for whose deaths I must share the blame, but I can spend the rest of my life trying to prove to my mother how much I love her. The last whispered words were all but lost as she rushed into Mitty's arms. All the while, Will, nay, Greg, now stood there, nodding and unknotting his fists. I can't let this child take all the blame, he spoke out. I helped sow the seeds of this thing with my blind prejudice and my obsessive promotion of the pageant. Still, the implacable judge, poor Will, somebody perhaps, someday perhaps he will learn to forgive himself. Yet better the man who takes others' sins, as well as his own, unto himself, than he who tries to slough his sins off on others. For in the tragedies of Salem and Peacehaven, look not for one villain, look to us all. As for Mitty, she has learned what I could not in this life, to forgive. Perhaps before she and I are one again, on this side, she will have learned to love all humanity. But if not, the stars will come round again. So Mitty still dreams in her sanctuary. I can feel the strength flowing into her from the wellspring of nature. For this is Beltane. I know it's not Beltane, it's. Is it pronounced Beltane? I thought it was like Salwayne or something like that. Anyway, when all things burst forth in renewed splendor, and the dead, dry deeds of the past are cast aside, the last fingers of pink in the western sky have grayed, and a soft breeze is filtering through the leaves to brush Mitty's face, and I must hurry to rejoin her, because he, her love and mine, has made peace with himself at last, and at this moment has just entered the woods. Through Eyes of Evil by Alpha Blair. All right, that's the end of that book. A good scare. It was not a good scare. Heiress to Horror. Submit. Do you hear me? Salem's Children. Not a good book. I'll give this about a 2.3 out of 5. The lady can write, but the story sucked. That's all. That's all, bruv.